definitely not me. I think it's actually live now.
It
Yeah.
is. That's
Hello.
what that little.
Sorry?
I said that's what that little yellow box that says live is for.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I didn't see that. Hello, everybody. Welcome, Dark Histories live stream. So today we're talking about Charlie Bravo from the last episode, the Priory, the Ballad Mystery, or it's got about 400 different titles. It was known as like so many things. Normally, the press kind of sort of catch on to one thing, but in this one, they call it the Ballad Mystery, Death at the Priory, Murder at the Priory. It was, yeah, the death of Charles Bravo, the Charles Bravo mystery. Anyway, we're doing that. So yeah, I hope you're all doing good. Got Hallie today. Hey, Hallie.
Hi. Am I really loud? If I'm really loud, you need to tell me.
Everyone
so I can turn it down.
Be roughly even, but if not, I can do it
turn
from
me
here.
Down.
Yeah. But I think everyone's roughly even, but it's a bit awkward. But yeah, let us know if anyone audio needs sorting out. But I think everyone's roughly even, but it's. Hey Trent, how you doing? What was I going to say about? Oh yeah, if you want to come onto the, that's where I was. If you want to come onto the stream, the link should be in the description. Just click on that, and you come straight in. If you want to come onto the stream, the link should be in the description. I can hear myself. Why can't I hear myself?
I don't know. Because I don't have anything up over here. This is the only window I've got.
Yeah, do I? I might have. It's probably me. Yeah, if you want to come onto the stream, click on the link. You come straight in. Yeah, come and have a chat. Otherwise, you can just use the text, and obviously, I can read that. Yeah. So, Hallie, what do you reckon about this Charlie Bravo? I've got first point of call before we even start about suspects. like leave your suspects at the door. Yeah, I'm roughly alive, Trent. Just about alive.
Sort of.
Scarred and battle scarred, but alive. Yeah. So, in terms of leave the suspect at the door for the moment. Do you think murder, manslaughter, or suicide? Just. In fact, everyone. What's everyone's kind of like? If you're in chat as well, like what do you think?
Well, I think it was all out planned. I mean, I think it was totally. Yeah. See, Trent agrees.
We got
murder.
2 murders.
Yeah, it's the wife.
So basically, everyone's going for murder so far.
Yeah, I don't think there's a deserved. Oh, really? You think he deserved it, Trent? Trent says it was deserved.
Well, for Charlie Bravo, he was a bit of a cock.
Well, but she was a little bit of a drama queen too. I mean.
Oh yeah, I think they were just as. I wouldn't say as bad as each other, but she was pretty much a nightmare. I mean, I think he was a total arsehole, basically.
Yeah. No, but aren't all women though?
Oh, God.
How is it? How do you kick somebody in the chat?
Trent just digging holes for himself straight away.
Just the dirt, throwing it on his head. She was a bit of a drama queen, though. I mean, the whole thing with running back to mom and dad whenever something didn't go her way, or they got in an argument. It just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think running back to her parents was kind of fair enough, because what else could you really do in the Victorian age? But I think if you look at some of the stuff that she did, I think she was definitely like, I think she probably made life quite difficult. But yeah, I do think he was also a massive. Basically, they were just a nightmare. The whole thing, and you look at it, was like on a fundamental level, just a complete disaster.
Yeah, those were probably 2 people that shouldn't have been married to anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's and especially not for the reasons that they got married as well,
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, before we start talking about suspects, I just wanted to know, what do we all think? Murder, suicide, or manslaughter? So far, we've basically got everyone saying murder.
Yeah.
She should have stayed with the doctor. The doctor was a bit of a creep, though, don't you think?
There was quite a bit of an age difference. Not that that means anything, but he was, I mean, he was pretty quick to arrange for that kind of back alley abortion that they had going on. I mean, I don't know if I would have stayed with him after something like that either.
I think the thing is, the doctor was seemed like a nice guy, and the way it's written about in the kind of history and stuff, it's like, yeah, he was a nice guy, but you do wonder, like, okay, he had like this convalescence kind of sanatorium, and he had lots of young women patients, and he got together with Florence. Like, how many others was he knocking off at the same time?
Yeah, and how many others did he arrange to have taken care of that we just don't know about? Oh, yeah. See that back alley thing?
He did the abortion himself.
Yeah, I mean, and probably wasn't his first one, you know.
Yeah, well, he did bugger it right up, because she ended up getting septicemia and nearly dying. So,
weren't most of them pretty bad though? I mean, it's not like any of them went really well, right?
Yeah, right. He must have had something that he liked. Yeah, right. I think he was a bit of a charmer. I think he was definitely a charismatic charmer. And I think, but if you look at it as well, you know, these are women that were probably fairly vulnerable, and especially going to fall for someone that suddenly has a lot of time for them and sort of says,
paying attention.
Yeah, after sort of coming out of abusive like husbands or marriages with abusive husbands or whatever, suddenly you've got this guy that's kind of got all the time in the world for you. I mean, that's kind of pinpoint target, right?
Yeah, no, it goes back to that whole, when you meet somebody in rehab type of a thing, you're kind of in this controlled environment, this little bubble, and it's like you come from this abusive relationship, and all of a sudden there's someone who's nice to you and pays attention to you and has time for you and acts like they care about you and all of that. And so he really does have a pretty vulnerable population to pull from.
Yeah, right. But saying that, they did seem to get on more than that, like their relationship did seem to be.
Yes, they did.
Because those sorts of relationships, they don't tend to last very long, I suppose. Especially once you get out into the real world, they kind of tend to fall apart quite quickly. But they continued quite a while. Once she was better, So maybe he was just a real charmer. Maybe he was just, he was bald, short, slightly fat, 62.
But he was a doctor, and didn't he have like a really good reputation? I mean,
he was doctor to like Charles Darwin, Florence Nightingale, like loads of people.
Yeah. So I mean, back then, reputation meant a lot.
Yeah, he had a great reputation until he was bending her over his mate's sofa, and got caught, and then it all went. His reputation hit the dust quickly.
Well, I hit something, but I mean that meant a lot, though. Especially, I mean, status back then meant it carried a lot of weight.
Oh yeah, definitely. He would have been seen as like, someone worth kind of knowing, I suppose.
Right.
But yeah. So we've already like gone massively off of this topic, I suppose. Although I'm still on topic. But yeah. So if we think it's murder, then so there were a list of suspects, right? Kind of did you? I mean, I think I've got a feeling everyone. What do everyone think of Griffith for a start? Let's start with the easy one. George Griffith, the coachman who.
The coachman.
Yeah, who bought the tartar emetic, the poison, basically, and was found in the local pub talking to the landlord, saying that he's going to die pretty soon. He wouldn't want to be in his shoes.
I think that a lot of it, though, I think as far as like the servants and the workers and the staff, I think they're kind of in a really hard spot because, I mean, she could go and tell him, hey, I need you to go and buy this. He's not going to say no.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he's going to buy it. He's going to bring it, regardless of what he thinks she's going to do with it. He's still going to go and get it.
Yeah, and I mean, he used it on the horses, I think, for worming the horses. So essentially, he poisoned the horses. To
I know. I was going to ask you that because from what I know of antimony, as far as what it is, the element that it is, I would never use that on my horses.
Yeah, so he used it for worming them, apparently. So it's essentially kind of like nuking their stomach to kind of get rid of everything, I suppose.
Yeah, the good, the bad, the whole 9 yards.
Yes.
And the horse,
Just hope it pulls through. No, apparently it was quite normal. Because or when he was talking about it in his statement, he doesn't seem to make any big deal of it. It's almost like, yeah, bought it for the horses. Do you know what I mean? Like, of course I did. Which seems, I thought that was quite unusual, but it must be a massively smaller dose. But I suppose they just gave it a small dose and it kind of just nuked its entire stomach, and then that was that. But so he bought it anyway. But it was more just the kind of stuff he said to the landlord. But I thought he was a bit of a red herring in a way. I thought, like, when I was first reading about it, I was like, oh, this guy, like it was all kind of real stacking up against him. But then you kind of read about it a little bit more and you think this guy's a bit of a red herring, I think.
Yeah, I don't think he had anything to do with it. I just think he had a few too many and was just talking bollocks. And
yeah, me too. And I think he probably, he didn't really have a motive once you kind of realized that actually, his job was relatively skilled. And I think the thing that really nailed it home for me when I was reading about it was when I found out that he actually got a job in like 2 days after he was fired. So it's like, actually, he's got no reason to be upset, really. I think when I read that, I kind of was like, oh, right, okay. That's kind of, I don't really trust, I don't really think that it's this guy anymore because his motive is just kind of gone now. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I didn't really think it was him. Does anyone think it was him?
No. I think he's just babbling at the pub.
Yeah, I mean,
he had a few drinks in him.
I was quite, I suppose, surprised and kind of impressed that he just said to the police, like, yeah, I said all of those things. Like, he was quite forward about it. Yeah, I did all those things. I said all of that. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So then we got Gully then. So do you think Gully was involved? Not necessarily has to have been the murderer, but do you think he was involved? Because I mean that's sort of the different aspect. Is a different question, isn't it? Like because I think we're all gonna sort of focus on who the murderer was being Florence, but were they involved or not is a different question entirely. Do you think Gully was involved at all?
I don't think so. I mean, I think her and was it Mrs. Cox? Is that who it was?
Yeah, Jane Cox. Yeah.
Yeah. I think she wrapped her into it somehow, some way, and held something over her head in some way, shape, or form, whether it was just her job or something else. Because didn't he fire her, but he let her stay on?
Yes. So basically when he fired her, rather than saying like, that's it, you're done, get out, he
let her stay.
Yeah. He basically said, you can find a new position and just
so you find a new job, you can stay here. And
basically it was pretty casual. Cause I think he probably realized that if he just fired her and kicked her out, like Florence would have absolutely gone mental.
And nobody else would do all the stuff that she did.
Well, yeah.
Plus, he'd have to deal with Florence, and she wouldn't be there to do it.
Yeah.
But, and then I also wonder, too, though, if Florence said, well, if you just help me with this, then you don't have to worry about finding a new job because he'll be out of the picture and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So, This is sort of, I should have sort of done this from the start, really, but this here.
Did you mute yourself? What are you doing?
I don't think I muted myself. Can you hear me? I was sharing the screen. So this here is all the people. So we got Mrs. Cox on the left. We got Florence in the top.
Benjamin.
Gully. Hello. What?
Oh, Ben.
What's going on? I don't understand. Can you not hear me? Hold on. What? Could you not hear me? Can you hear me now? No, I didn't mute myself. All right. Okay. So normal. You can hear me on the chat. I will mute myself and I'll unmute myself and see if that.
Or did you mute me?
No.
So you can hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. Everyone can hear everyone except from you can't hear me, I think.
See, he did this to me before we started.
Right. Yes, so I was anyway. While Sally sorts
They
that
can
out.
hear both of us. I just can't hear you.
Yeah. So yes, this was.
God.
I was showing off that, wasn't I? So that's Gully anyway on the right. So and Bravo in the bottom, and Florence in the top. So yeah, whilst Hallie sorts that out. Where are we? We're talking about Gully. I think Gully was possibly involved because he had that whole thing with sharing with meeting up with Mrs. Cox. So does anyone think that was quite suspicious? The fact that he, had kind of said to his butler, "Don't ever let anyone in from the Priory ever again to my house," and then he kind of met up with her 5 times in the run up to Charlie Bravo's death. Did anyone find that? Did anyone find that sort of suspicious at all? Because I thought that was dead sus.
See, I can't hear you though. That's the thing.
Can you hear me now? I don't know why he would help. I thought that he might. Yeah, I mean, he was very obsessed with. Well, I don't know. It's really difficult to follow whether or not he was bitter and obsessed with her or not with Florence, because the way she dumped him was kind of a bit bad. I thought, he kind of just sacked her off. She kind of just sacked him off and kind of led him on a little bit. And I can definitely see him being angry about that. But he's in court, when you read his transcript, he didn't really seem to be too angry about it. But I did wonder, I don't know, if he was still madly in love with her, perhaps he could have helped. He could have. I don't know in what way he would have really helped. That's the only thing. I mean, he didn't need to supply the poison because that's kind of the obvious one, because he was supplying medicines. Yeah, I know what you mean, because what like a lot of people mention, like antimony's a bit of a vicious poison. So maybe I think he probably would have been able to kill him in a more efficient way than antimony as well, to be honest. Like if he really was supplying poison, because he supplied a bunch of medicines to the Priory. But they were kind of homeopathic medicines, I think, for Florence, and so I think the suspicion in general comes from the fact that he supplied a bunch of homeopathic medicines, and then when the police searched the house, they couldn't find any of the bottles and stuff that he'd given them. So I think that's where the suspicion comes from, is somewhere along the line, whatever he was supplying her kind of got sort of pushed to one side. But I mean, anyone could have anyone could have done that, or not done that. So yeah, I don't know. I thought he seemed suspicious at some times, but at the same time, he had no real reason to, like you say. And I do think he probably would have suggested something better than antimony, because let's face it, it didn't kill him in a very efficient or very nice way, really. I mean, what I thought was really strange was it was 10 times the fatal dose and it didn't kill him in like an hour. You know, he survived like 2 or 3 days. Well, 72, 55 hours, wasn't it? I thought that was quite a long time to survive, really. If you had 10 times the fatal dose. I don't know. So Cox, I mean, I assume. How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, cool.
I
So
don't
it was in the water. Well, yeah. So apparently, that's the best guess, is that the antimony was in the water, because if it was in the food, he would have been ill at dinner time. Like, excuse me. He would have
Zombie
been.
plague.
Do what? Sorry.
It's a zombie plague.
Yeah. So the leftovers, the remnants of chicken pox. Oh man, what's even got a disgusting name? Anyway, if he'd have eaten it in the food, he would have been sick at dinner, because it would have affected him within minutes, they reckon. And they all ate the same food anyway. The water was apparently drank by one of the doctors.
Yeah.
So they reckon that it was potentially changed.
Right, but wouldn't there be residual in the cup, or did they switch cups?
So, I don't know. I mean, they would have to properly, seriously wash it out, I guess.
Are you clucking?
But
No, but he pulls feathers out of his mouth every once in a while.
Yeah, right. Oh, that was. Yeah. Oh, it was hideous. Yeah, no, I don't know. No, the actual way that he got the poison into him has never really been figured out. Basically, it's almost like the water is just suggested, therefore it's kind of accepted at this point, because I think the timing is more or less worked out, that if you took that much antimony that they found in his stomach, you would be sick within minutes. So they reckon that whatever it was that was poisoned, he must have drank whilst he was, or ate whilst he was in his room. And
Right.
all he did when he was in his room was drink the water from a jug and rub some laudanum in his gums. So it can only been one of those two things, really. So the water is just kind of accepted, but yet there are some people that have sort of given testimony that the doctor drank from the water about 4 hours after he arrived.
Yeah.
But Mrs. Cox had ample. See, this is where. Okay, so next we asked. You know, we talked a bit about Gully. Just to go back over that quick, Hallie. What do you think? Do you think Gully was involved, or?
No, I don't.
No, that was kind of the conclusion that we came to as well. Yeah, so Cox could have changed the water. So yeah, so now we sort of say, did you think Cox was involved? I definitely think Cox was involved at some point.
I think she had to have been.
She has to have been, right? And that's the thing with the water. You said about Cox could have changed it. She had perfect opportunity to change it, because when she first found him ill, she kept sending the maid, Mary Ann, off to do like menial tasks, like go and get some coffee, go and get this, go and get that. And although some of the tasks that she sent her were expected and understood, like go and get the doctor, go and get the water and the mustard. She did send her on some tasks that were kind of what for. She sent her upstairs to her room to get some something that they didn't use, basically.
What was the mustard for? The mustard powder?
This is really weird, right?
I'm sorry, it's an American. I'm like, is this like a British thing? I
had to look it up because it baffled me as well. Because I thought at first it was to make him sick, right? I thought it was like almost like a stomach pump kind of thing. Like they would make him drink mustard and water and he would throw up, right? No.
Like Epicac.
Better than that. They put your hands and feet in it to keep your heart pumping, apparently. Well, it had 3 uses. So basically, the first use was to make him drink it and make him sick. That's one thing.
So they put like mustard powder in a bowl of water or something.
So I think they made like a really strong mustard powder and water mixture, and then they put his feet into it, and then that would apparently. I don't know how much medical fact there is to this, or if this is Victorian medicine, like kind of personified. But the idea was that it would kind of keep your blood pumping because I guess it's invigorating, maybe. I don't know. But and then the other thing they did was rub it on his chest as well, again to keep his heart pumping, almost like kind of Vicks vapor rub.
Like Vicks vapor rub. That's what I was thinking.
But it would sort of keep your kind of heart and your blood pumping or whatever. Again, I don't know how much kind of medical evidence there is that would work. Bizarre though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because when I first read it, I just assumed like, oh, they're making a mixture for him to be sick. But yeah, no, it was to put his feet into. Strange.
Oh, did you look at BritishFoodHistory.com?
I did not look at BritishFoodHistory.com.
I typed in something like, why did Victorians use mustard powder? Or what did they use it for? Something like that. And like the second link was BritishFoodHistory.com, something about mustard powder.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Like, yeah. And say the fact that they use it for like all 3 different things. And again, they injected brandy into him as well. I mean, some of the stuff they did was pretty strange. They injected brandy into his bloodstream to keep his heart pumping as well.
That's crazy.
Yeah, pretty strange, right? So Cox, how involved do you think she was? Do you think she was?
Oh, I think she was in it.
Do you think she was mired like in it, or do you think she was kind of?
No, I think she was in the thick of it. Totally. I think she was totally in on it. Whether she wanted to be or not, I don't know, but I think she was totally in on it, like full force.
Do you think she was like forewarned and planned it with Florence? Because I assume we all think Florence killed him, right? So do you think she was like well into it sort of weeks in advance, or do you think basically Florence kind of sprung it on her that and kind of said, by the way, I've just poisoned my husband, help me out?
That's a good question, because I could see it both ways. I could see her totally springing it on her and saying, hey, I just poisoned this, the mister. I need you to do this. And for her to just be so kind of flummoxed about it that she knew nothing else but to just do what she was told, type of a thing. But at the same time, I could also see Florence going up to Mrs. Cox and saying, hey, so this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And totally planning it out, so that's a good question, because I can totally see it both ways.
With the kind of age gap and everything, and kind of Mrs. Cox being the kind of older, kind of wiser head, I guess, I created this kind of story, like fan fiction in my mind, was that,
Tell us your story, Ben.
Cox. Well, the Mrs. Cox was basically almost like, the puppet master, kind of running the, once I think she maybe got it sprung on her a little bit, but once she got it sprung on her, she was like almost like the Godfather or something, like, right, okay,
petting the cat.
Yeah, like, okay, right, we need to clean this up. You do this, you do that, kind of,
now you're gone again.
Oh, you like? just leave and come back. Yeah, I kind of got this idea that she was kind of pulling the strings after she kind of got dragged into it, but I don't know. I mean, this is pure fantasy, like in conjecture. But I mean, anyone in chat, like Morelli, what do you think? Do you think she was really kind of in there, or do you think she was just kind of dragged into it?
Making a lot of noise.
Is that all right?
I can't hear you, so hold on.
Okay.
This is ridiculous. I'm going to try something. Don't eat that. Don't eat that.
Do you think they should sort of planned it like in advance? Because I haven't. I was obviously writing the episode, and I couldn't quite. I normally come up with some sort of kind of conclusion for myself, but I was completely out of it with this one, and I was really on the fence between like whether she planned it in advance or was just sprung on her basically, and I could see it both ways, because I thought her meetings, because then it brings in Gully. If they'd planned it in advance, then I wonder how much Mrs. Cox had spoke to Gully about it as well. But whether or not that's true, yeah, she was definitely motivated. I definitely think yeah, she I mean, she had the motive, and all the motivation was there, wasn't she? Especially with there's some stuff that I didn't put in the episode as well about the way. Well, it was quite interesting because I found a bunch of letters that Charles Cox wrote to his not Charles Cox, Charles Bravo wrote to his mum on the days running up to his death, and he'd written these letters, and he was quite caring towards Florence, and because she was obviously getting over her abortion, he was actually quite caring, like a lot more caring than I realized. But he sort of didn't get it. He was still missing the point. But I also think, despite the fact that he was caring, he was sort of he when he got these kind of temper tantrums, he really kind of went for it. So I do think, like, I do think she probably, Florence planned it definitely, like, and was motivated, but I just, yeah, and I just don't know about Cox. I don't know how much she brought her into it ahead of time or not. But I definitely think it was Cox and Florence that murdered her, and I definitely think, because the other thing that I thought was interesting was after it happened and after the inquest, they just kind of split up very quickly. Like, Gully went to Austria, she sacked Mrs. Cox, and Mrs. Cox went off to Birmingham, and she went kind of to Hampshire to live in Southsea, and it happened really soon after the inquest did. And it's like, whenever you sort of, sometimes you see those kind of things where people do something like this, they go through a situation like this, they just like kind of explode. You know, like afterwards, the group kind of disperses. Yeah, can you hear me now?
I'm back.
All right, that's good. Yeah, you got it. That's the word, the perfect word I was looking for. Yes, the group disperses very quickly. And this group definitely dispersed really quickly, and that's what I wondered about Gully. Yeah, I wondered that's kind of my feeling, is that Cox kind of jumped in after the fact to kind of almost like damage control. I definitely think she was a liar. Like, she's definitely lying to the doctors and stuff, wasn't she?
Oh, about not knowing, or about
everything. I mean, like,
about everything.
what was the really suspect thing that she said was, I mean, she said quite a lot of suspect things, but the fact that she said, "Oh, I told the doctor about, you know, I
that
told
he
you."
had said he took a poison or something like that. He told her he took a poison. Mrs. Cox, I took a poison.
Yeah, and the doctor said, "You didn't tell me that," and she was like, "Yes, I did. Of course, I did." It's you just think, no, you didn't.
Didn't she say that? She said that she told all the doctors that.
Oh, yeah, and
Yeah, she was a liar.
yeah, I think she was really
She was a liar.
really suspect, and I definitely think that she probably changed the water if she needed to, and I definitely think like she cleaned up quite a lot. So
Oh yeah.
between him first getting ill and the doctor first showing up, she cleaned the scene a lot. She cleaned all of his clothes, she cleaned up all the vomit, she cleaned up like everything. And in a lot of ways you can say, well, that was kind of part of her sort of job as a kind of nurse, I suppose. And B, she probably would have wanted to kind of maybe
as a crime scene specialist.
Yeah, but I mean, she could have fobbed it off and sort of
artist.
almost like giving him his dignity, you know, like, you know, but I think she was cleaning the scene.
They took some of his vomit though.
Well, so this is the thing, right? Is that she knew. People say that she probably knew that they would have wanted to, because back in the day, like Victorian times, doctors.
They did.
Well, they did and they didn't. They did, but it wasn't Mrs. Cox that helped them get that. So basically, because back in the day, like doctors were essentially detectives. You know, that they did a lot of the job of the police. So she would have known that they would have been going through like the scene, like a crime scene, and she didn't inform them that. She told them that he'd been ill, like he'd been throwing up and stuff, and that she'd cleaned it all, and she'd cleaned the bowl that he was being sick into, and she'd cleaned his clothes that he'd been sick on, and all the rest of it. But he was actually being sick out the window, and no one told the doctors that until Mary Ann, who kept dropping everyone in it. And I think she was quite smart.
She was a little sketchy, that little girl.
I think she was probably the only one that told the truth in a lot of cases.
I think she had info though that, like, I don't know if they just weren't paying attention to her, or I mean, don't you think that she probably said some things that really could have made a difference, and they just didn't?
So
they just kind of brushed her off.
Definitely. So in the inquest, they actually said to her, she insinuated very clear. I mean, you would say it was barely concealed. The fact that she thinks that when she first ran in the room and said, "Mr. Bravo's ill, please, please come and help," and Cox went to help, she said that Florence wasn't really asleep and was faking sleep. And she insinuated that heavily.
Just kind of brushed it off. Yeah, that she was just totally faking it, pretending like, "Oh, I didn't hear you. I'm sleeping. Sorry, don't know what to say."
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And there were a few things that she said like that was very much like insinuating that Cox and Florence were fishy,
in
basically. Yeah. But yeah, so basically, Mrs. Cox didn't tell them that he was being sick out onto the roof. So eventually they did get a sample off the roof, but it wasn't because Mrs. Cox helped them get that. It was Mary Ann, I think, that told them about it.
Oh, he was at the window puking, and so hey, you could probably get some out there.
Yeah, so they scraped some off the roof, basically.
Just go shoo the birds away. You'll get plenty.
Yeah, but Mrs. Cox didn't tell them about that. Although I don't know what she was trying to conceal, really, because they were going to find out what it was, unless she just didn't want them to find out too soon. I don't know.
How did they find out? Because it's not like they had cutting edge science going on there.
Yeah, I don't know actually.
How did they determine that it was antimony?
I don't know. They took samples and they took some. Well, actually, so antimony leaves granules. It's kind of
Oh,
like becomes kind of like crystallized granules,
oh,
and so
okay.
they found granules, and then they extrapolated upon that like how much it could have been. I think so. I don't think it was like
Okay.
totally scientific, especially not. I mean, the when they say how many granules they found and that how many granules they think they could have been in there, it was like plus minus 10. It was quite a big swing in how much it could have
Yeah.
been. So I don't think it was super scientific, but basically they found these granules, which would have been microscopic, I guess. And that's how they knew it was antimony.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think there was too much kind of. It was a bit. I always imagine Ichabod Crane from
Yeah.
um, Sleepy Hollow, the
Yes.
Johnny Depp one.
Yeah.
Whenever kind of with these powders, over some kind of cut out stomach, just kind of dropping like powders and different color smokes coming off of it. But yeah, I think it was probably not far off.
Okay.
But yeah,
I,
so oh, go on. Sorry.
no, it's not on the same train of thought. I've just kind of on a different video. I'm just wondering what was it exactly? How did her first husband die?
Definitely Trent. How did we say? Yeah, this is the thing. Okay, so if she killed this guy, did she kill her first husband? Her first husband died of
It's
alcoholism.
uh,
Eventually, was supposedly like alcoholism.
but
Eh,
they didn't do an inquest on him, right?
no,
There was
it
no.
was
It was just
officially it was
kind of
heart
assumed.
failure. Yeah. Officially, it was heart failure, but it was just he'd been drinking himself
Mm.
to death basically for a long time. But okay, so now there are some things which are a bit suspect about this, and both of them.
I think she killed him too.
Well, there's evidence that both the guys, for about a month leading up to their deaths, came down with sicknesses that cleared up quite quickly.
Oh, like like arsenic poisoning and stuff.
And
Women
there,
really they really liked arsenic back then for some reason.
well, see, there is a theory that to put men off drinking, their wives would
Yes.
poison them,
Yes.
and they would a
Right.
bit like training a dog, like negative
Like the bitter apple
associations.
spray. Yes.
Yeah, like negative
I've just never
associations with alcohol. So if they got drunk alcohol, then they would poison them just a little bit, and then they would make the meal. And Charlie
Yeah.
Bravo went a couple of days where he spent like all
What
morning
an idiot.
throwing up, which could have been a hangover as well, I suppose. But it sounded a lot worse than a hangover.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're somebody who drinks like that all the time, hangovers are kind of far and few between.
You wouldn't get the hangover like that, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
because I
it
mean,
doesn't.
there
It
was
takes a lot.
yeah, and I mean the first time Charlie Bravo talked about being ill like that, he was yeah, Charles Bravo.
I just want his middle name to be Alpha or something.
Yeah, right. But the first time he talks about being ill like that, he was basically like very close to shitting himself on the train and sort of throwing up in the street on his way to work and things like that. But by the time lunchtime hit, he was fine. Or by the time tea time hit, when he got home from work, he was
Okay.
fine. But it was so bad that people were like, you've got to go home. You look like death, kind of thing. But it would clear up very quickly.
Who made?
Yeah, so Morelli, yeah, so it may have been accidental, but that's another theory is that, yeah, that maybe because Florence was a bit drunk herself that night, she'd drunk like 2 bottles of sherry between her
Or
and
was
this.
she just testing him out to see how much she could tolerate?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that she went to poison his water like as usual, and he
No,
just got more.
no, like when he was getting sick at work, was she poisoning him just to see how much he could tolerate before
Oh,
he would actually die? Like, what is your limit? Like, if I give you this much, is it just going to make you sick, or is it going to do the job?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, the only thing is
Like,
that when he did die, that it was a massive overdose. So I
yeah,
mean, she wasn't playing around with fine margins. Like,
yeah, because she was probably practicing along the way, and he built up a tolerance, and then he had to have a whole bunch in order to kill him.
my stomach hurts from this chat. I
Yeah,
know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, especially when you read like like what it did to his stomach, and it's like, oh man, what a poisoning.
Well, it's just like arsenic. I mean, they,
It
it
disintegrated his stomach
basically
basically.
just, yeah, it melts you from the inside out, basically. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
happens to the rats when you use it as rat poisoning.
Yeah, it's basically what it did. But yeah, yeah. So there is some discussion though about it being a mistake, about how she was possibly a bit drunk herself, and she went to poison him,
Oops.
and then accidentally kind of put in like 10 times too much. Which I suppose that's the kind of the people that disagree with that theory say you wouldn't have accidentally put in 10 times too much. Doesn't matter how drunk you were. And also the idea that if you're poisoning your husband, that might have quite a sobering effect on you.
Unless she just said, screw it, give me another drink.
Which is what she did do, because she did say, maybe she went in there, poisoned his sachet, and then said, Mary, go and get me another drink, which, she did get Mary Ann to go and get her another drink. So maybe she was like, go get me another drink. Let's see how this goes.
Everyone deals with death differently.
Yeah. Because I mean, one of the most suspicious things for me that I think shows that Cox was involved beforehand is that when Charlie Bravo came out onto his landing and said, get me some water, she didn't react.
She didn't. Yeah.
And if you see the floor plan, she had to have heard him. So basically, she was standing basically right outside. He was standing, right outside the door, shouting, and she didn't react. That to me says that she knew, her and Florence knew this ahead of time.
She was sketchy.
Or that's where Florence
knew.
dropped the bomb. But I don't think, I think it's more likely that she knew.
No, I think she was in on it. Wasn't she a staff member though, like with the first husband too, or no?
No, so she
was
hired Cox after she got the Priory, yeah.
Oh, because for some reason I thought she was the one that introduced them.
Yes, she was. She introduced her to Charles Bravo, but she was already living at the Priory. So she'd already got rich. She'd already bought the Priory and moved in, and then Mrs. Cox introduced her to Charles. She knew Bravo. Charles Bravo from. So Mrs. Cox had family in Jamaica,
right?
That worked on the plantations, and the Bravo family were like kind of colonial traders. So she knew them via those kind of links. They were also in Jamaica. Like trading.
Okay.
So,
no, so she figured they'd be a good pairing or what have you.
Yeah, they're both kind of fancy and colonial.
Conquer the world. Let's plant a flag and call it our own.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, basically it was.
Man.
I mean, for once we pretty much all agree. Even Trent, I think, agrees that it was Cox and Florence, right?
Even Trent.
Yeah, even Trent agrees that it was murder and it was Cox and Florence, and that was that.
I don't know. Trent could be suffering from confirmation bias. Just saying.
But do you think she? So do you think then, sort of bringing that up? Do you think she killed her first husband, Ricardo, as well?
Yes, I do. I really do.
You?
I think she was a bit of a Black Widow. Look at Trent. We love you, Trent. I do. Did she have a husband number 3?
She didn't. No. She killed herself like 2 years. Well, she didn't kill herself. She drank herself to death 2 years later.
Herself to death.
Like it wasn't like an intentional suicide, but she drank herself to death.
But I think that if there was a husband number 3, she'd have probably offed him too. I think that she kind of just got a taste for it. And, when things started not going her way or the way she liked it, she would just, I think she was just one of those women that figured it'd be easier just to get rid of him than divorce him.
But I mean, in Victorian times, it probably it most definitely was. Like there was no option really. Separation and divorce was really just not
It was kind of
viable.
unheard of. Yeah.
Mm.
It was just kind of unheard of, right? Isn't that why she got sent to the sanatorium in the first place?
Yeah, and like after he like slapped her about, even physical abuse, her dad still said you should go back.
I'll talk to him, but you need to go back anyway. It's your duty, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like oh, it's your marriage duty. You should go back. So Morella, I think all the miscarriages started to mess up her hormones, and that she was depressed. Yeah, she was definitely like I think suffering from like depression from the miscarriages. I mean, I don't really, but I can only imagine that would have a heavy psychological toll.
Oh yeah. Well, and I mean, and especially because back then there was such a pressure on women about you need to have a family and you need to raise a family, and I mean it was hard enough as it was, just because every time you had a baby, you never knew if it was going to live or not. But exactly.
Yeah, no way out but murder. Yeah, I do think that was kind of the way she saw it. Yeah, and like you say as well, like she would have had a lot of pressure to. I mean, Charles Bravo, like when he wrote to his mum about the miscarriages, he would write, "We lost Charles Bravo the second." He would call it the undead baby, or the dead child, like
Just naming
Charles
the dead
Bravo.
kids.
Yeah, Charles Bravo the second, before they even knew its sex or whatever, like its gender. He would call it Charles Bravo the second in the letters, rather than like her baby or whatever. It was, or our baby, or yeah, it was. He would call it by its name, which was Charles Bravo the second. So she was under this kind of quite a lot of pressure to kind of give them like an heir to kind of continue the Bravo name, I guess.
For all he knew, he would have just been making girls, but that's not what. But don't you think that the alcohol too kind of had an impact on the miscarriages? I mean, on the feasibility of actually, I mean, considering how healthcare was back then, which was basically non-existent, her level of drinking and then trying to carry a pregnancy full term with her medical history, I mean, it couldn't have helped.
Yeah, I would have thought so. I mean, I don't really know that too much about that kind of stuff, but her medical history was, I don't know how viable her carrying of alcohol was healthcare. Yeah, I think you might be right.
I think you're right, Trent. Put a little cyanide in it. Call me in the morning.
Yeah, right. It's like they some of the stuff like like laudanum and stuff like that. I mean, that was basically poison yourself and take a load of drugs and you'll be fine. But yeah, no, I don't know her medical history, like how much that would have affected her ability to be able to carry like a pregnancy to like term. But it sounds like it was pretty bad.
Well, because I mean, I think
halcyon days.
Yeah, no kidding. I just think that her level of alcoholism, I mean, the effect that it would have on a fetus, just especially because of the abortion, and because that wasn't the first abortion she had, was it?
So she had two abortions and 2 miscarriages.
Right. So between the 2 abortions, I mean, to start with, it's not like they were, high quality medical practices.
Yeah. Well, they were knocked out in her bedroom.
Yeah. Between those and then the miscarriages, I mean, alcohol on a fetus, and then just it just couldn't have. It didn't bode well. I just don't think that it was helping any as far as actually trying to maintain a pregnancy.
So her drinking is a difficult one because nothing really talks about it too much. But I mean, if she drank that the night of his death or the night of his poisoning, she drank 2 bottles of sherry apparently over dinner that she shared with Mrs. Cox. I mean, that's quite a
Oh
lot.
my God.
Like that's
Oh
a
my
fair
God, are
bit.
you serious?
Yeah, that's quite a bit, isn't it? So
Yeah. Um,
and then when she went to
yeah.
bed, she
I
was
mean,
still calling
this is,
downstairs for more red wine. So I mean, she was clearly an experienced drinker.
jeez. Talk about a tolerance, though. But yeah. Wow, she could still walk straight and everything. I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
it,
straight enough to
it,
murder her husband, apparently.
well, and I mean, enough to very cleverly calculate which doctor she was going to call when.
Yeah, so okay, so let's talk about when he was actually ill, right? So if it was them, if you think it was Florence, right, and I guess everyone here thinks it was Florence, how does she, was she just a great actor? Because even at the inquest, they said that she acted as someone who had like who was innocent, basically. Like she genuinely acted as if she was an innocent party and tried to get as much help as she could for him. Why
I'm
do you
sure.
think? Do you think she regretted it and she actually did try and help him, or do you think she was just
No, I think she was a sociopath that liked to kill her husbands.
and she was just playing a good role? Like,
That's just who she was. I mean, women can be sociopathic the same way that men can. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, like
and I
when he
think
was
that's
ill,
just,
she was
I,
quite upset and she was trying to help him, by writing to the different doctors and things like that.
I think it was just, I really think she was just really good at doing it.
So there's one.
I don't think she held any remorse or felt any guilt about it.
See, because I wondered if she had some like sort of last minute remorse and kind of wanted to actually try and get him help. But then it was pointed out that the letter that she wrote to Dr. Gull, who was like that super high surgeon who would like, um, you know, seen Queen Victoria and stuff,
Right.
she never actually mentions the fact that he was poisoned.
No.
Um,
She's just like, hey, he's sick. Can you come see him? I mean,
yeah. And but by that point they all knew that it was poison. So why would she not have told him at her very first possible thing if she really had his kind of best interest at heart? Surely she would have said he's poisoned so that the guy could come kind of forewarned.
so there was some sense of urgency, you mean?
Yeah,
Like,
or at least he knew what he
like,
was walking into.
oh, hey, this guy's really sick. I better get there.
Mm. And instead she just said, oh, he's really sick. So was she just very calculated and playing the
Mm-hmm.
role?
Mm-hmm. I think she was. I think she was just, I think she was just really good at it. I think she was going through the motions.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what makes me think maybe she didn't mean to give him so much, or she was calculated. Morelli says, yeah. So basically, that's kind of where I'm sort of stuck on the fence again, like because I wonder if she actually meant to do it. I do wonder if it was manslaughter sometimes, because of the way that she was so helpful. Really, I mean, Mrs. Cox obscured a lot of the facts, and Mrs. Cox obfuscated the whole thing, really. But Florence sort of
I think
helped.
Florence's only concern was Florence. I mean, think about how just defensive she got when his parents decided that they were going to contact an attorney and
That was weird.
take this thing. I mean, she just, all of a sudden, kind of flipped out a little bit because she realized that she needed to put all her ducks in a row and make sure that she had all her I's dotted and T's crossed. And
Yeah, I think that
she's
was
like, holy crap, they care.
that to me seemed like her most kind of guilt. The bit that she seemed most guilty was when she knew that the family were pushing for the second inquest, and she suddenly was kind of writing that you know, oh, you know, if you have a second inquest, all this stuff might just come out about Charles, you know, like kind of almost, it was very defensive, like, you know, to basically
Victim
don't
blaming.
do it. Yeah, she was, wasn't she? For a
Total
little,
victim blaming. Totally. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he was just trying to, you know, he was upset because he had to pay a bunch of money to his mistress with a 5-year-old daughter. No, I mean, she wasn't worried about anything but herself.
She was, and I thought, I mean, I don't know if I read it the same way everyone else read that, but I read that as if, like, you know, your kind of darling boy that's just died is gonna have, because I assume it was a bit a secret about his mistress. She was basically insinuating, you know, it would be a shame for all this stuff to come out into the open, and, you know, to kind of ruin his reputation.
His good name, yeah.
Yeah, to kind of drag his good name through the mud, I guess. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Someone who's feeling like real remorse, like actual sadness, or oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that, doesn't say, hey, you know, boy, it'd be a real shame if all of this dirt came out.
Yeah, that's the way I read it. Exactly the way I read it was, yeah, like,
if you're feeling bad about it, you're not sitting there trying to think of all these things that you can twist and turn to make yourself look good.
yeah, I definitely thought it was sus.
That was jacked up. I mean, it's just, that was total victim blaming. It really was.
So we kind of spoke a bit about it a bit earlier, but after the second inquest, they basically dispersed really quickly, and I think Gully just would have done that anyway, because I think he was just trying to get out of the country because he, you know, his reputation was dirt anyway.
Yeah.
But with Cox and Florence, the situation's a bit different, right? And they apparently had somewhat of an argument, and then she sacked Cox, and that was it. Like, you know, very quickly after the inquest. Which I wonder if that was Cox saying to her, like, basically, like, I can't believe you dragged me into this shit.
Yeah, I covered your ass. I can't believe you did this to me. I'm out. I'm done. Just, I'll keep my mouth shut. You keep yours shut, and we're just gonna go our separate ways.
That's the way I saw it, because they were like very close. You know, I mean, she was essentially a surrogate, you know, parental figure for quite a few years. So
that happens a lot. I mean, that happens so often. You know, these couples, for lack of a better term, you know, just that go through this relationship, you know, on a killing spree or what have you. Then at the end, when it's all said and done, they go there, you know, they just, it's a big cluster, and
it's almost like they can't stomach each other anymore, right? And they just kind of, right, like they just, it's suddenly like they hate each other, and that's that, and they just kind of, yeah, go their separate ways or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I saw it, was that she basically just was done, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it's like you said, I can't believe you drug me into this, you know.
You think she just used Cox? Yeah, I do. I think I do think she basically kind of played that card of, oh, you know, you've got to help me out, and guilt tripped her into it.
Yeah, totally.
Because if you look at Cox, she didn't have much of a reason to do it when you realise that she had all that kind of inheritance coming from her Jamaican plantations.
She had nothing to gain from it.
And quite a lot to lose, really.
Yeah, but I mean, there was nothing for her. There was nothing. She wasn't going to get anything good out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And like I say, quite a lot to lose, really, because she didn't even really need a job long term, because she would have known that she was going to be going to Jamaica to inherit these plantations, or at least, you know, she wouldn't have needed that job at that point, because they said that the plantations were worth £6,800, which back then was a lot. It was a lot of money.
Yeah. And she had kids, didn't she? Have 2 little kids.
She had 3 kids, and they were all in education. 3. So that was the big motive for it being Cox being the killer, was that she had these 3 kids, and she was trying to keep them in education, and Charlie Bravo basically sacked her. Therefore, she would have been angry enough to kill him, because she would have been desperate. But then later, like many years later, they found out that she had all this inheritance coming her way. So actually, that kind of blows that the main motive out the water straight away, like financial hardship, basically, because all of her financial issues would have been solved, and she would have known this, and it would have been imminent as well. So that's where the whole kind of, was it Florence just kind of used, basically like using Cox, and that's what I think.
I think she was her scapegoat.
And I definitely think she kind of dragged her into it through like a guilt trip as well. You know, like, you've got to help me out. You know, like, I've done this. Help me out.
If you love me like you say you do, you're going to help me.
Some people are just shitty, motive or not. Yeah.
There's that too. Yeah.
I mean, I think so. Okay, do we think Florence was like a total sociopath, or do you think?
Yes.
Like, because I mean, she had kind of a reason to do it. She was getting abused pretty heavily, like, in the marriage.
Was she really? I mean, was she really?
I think she was suffering from. I don't think it was a very nice relationship.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? At the same time, Ben, I think, I'm not saying she wasn't. I'm not saying it wasn't rough, and that maybe he, did some things he shouldn't have done. But at the same time, I think she had a little bit of, I don't know. What do they call it? You know how when you say you caught a really big fish and it was really kind of a minnow?
Maybe she was just a bit murdery.
She liked to elaborate a little bit on some things. I think she kind of liked to embellish upon some stuff, and maybe it wasn't as bad as she, told her parents. But I'm not saying it was perfect, but I don't think it was as bad as she was making it out to be.
Well, when you read her letters, Charles' letters to his parents, he's, like I said, he was surprisingly caring in the letters. Yeah. And to me, I read the letters after I'd read all the other stuff, like the inquest and everything. Right. And I was expecting this real bastard. And then I read the letters and I was quite surprised at actually how soft and sort of how much he was also quite in love with Florence as well. I think he was actually like quite in love with her.
That's what I'm saying. I think she had a tendency to embellish and paint the picture the way she wanted it to be seen.
Mm. If you think the only way out is the only way to deal with it is murder, yeah. Especially if it's the first thing.
Yeah. I'll just kill him.
Yeah.
Well, what about divorce? No, it's all right. I'll just kill him. It's easier that way.
I could divorce, or I could just poison him.
It's more fun that way.
It'll be more comprehensive. Just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Less,
you don't have to worry if you.
Less money spent, less trouble.
Exactly. You don't have to worry about, paying him any alimony or anything like that. No, I think she really liked to embellish things, and she painted the picture the way she wanted it to be seen.
I think he pretty much solved, like, when she married him as well, like, he married for the money, which is kind of a long-term thing, but she married him to get her reputation back, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a short-term deal, really. So yeah. I think the novelty of being married to him would have worn off quite quickly.
Yeah, you get your name back, everything's good, I'm good now, and so
so what use are you? Yeah. Whereas for him, like, it was much more of a long-term thing, because for him it was like the money, the house, everything, the lifestyle. But for her, yeah, it was, once he'd fulfilled his purpose,
yeah, then she was done.
Yeah, and then I think she kind of realized, this relationship's not so great. He's not actually a very nice bloke. It doesn't treat me that well. And what am I getting out of this now? Because, I'm good. I don't really need him. Bam, poison.
Right. Well, yeah, because it's like you said, divorce wasn't really an option. right?
Yeah. Even if like society would have accepted it, like her dad wouldn't. Like, her dad was very anti her getting divorce.
Yeah.
Very
So
much.
what other way to do it is there?
Yeah, so it was definitely Florence.
Oh yeah.
To conclude, Florence definitely did it. Florence definitely premeditated it.
Dark Histories has solved another one.
We all have a friend like her, right? Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. It's me though. That's the problem.
Yeah, Hallie is the friend.
I am the friend. Yeah, true confessions. I did have to kill a hamster via rat poison once, but that was
Well, similar. Hamster, human, they're all the same.
rat. Yeah, hamster, human, rat. It's all just one big circle.
They're all the same to me.
Lotus Flower just gave me a thumbs up on that one. I'm good with it.
Yeah, so that's pretty much like I mean, it was quite a straightforward case, really, wasn't it? Like I think, you know, there are all these kind of superfluous characters and kind of peripheral kind of theories, but really, I mean, I think everyone pretty much sees that now and thinks, yeah, it was Florence and Cox.
Oh, totally. I think that, but I think the fun part was the part that we really didn't get into much.
What was that?
She was kind of a little floozy, though. I mean, how many people? Don't you lock doors back then? They don't have locks on their doors. Her and the doctor. I mean, that wasn't the only time she got caught. I mean,
yeah. So she got caught by a maid and had to bribe her.
Yeah. Right. You know, hold on. Let me, pull my skirt down and run after the maid.
Well, so it was quite. I mean, without getting too graphic, it was a time when women weren't supposed to be sexually liberated. You know, women were supposed to be kind of on a pedestal, kind of sexually pure figures that were kind of the mother of the household, you know, and if they had sex, they basically grinned and bared it just so that they could have children. You know, it was like a practical function to have a child, and you didn't enjoy it, that was for sure. Do you know what I mean? But she was clearly having sex because she enjoyed it with Gully, you know.
Yeah, and she wasn't going the birth control route as far as, Victorian style birth control.
As it should be. Practical purposes only, thank you.
That's right. She wasn't, obviously, since she had, 2 abortions, she wasn't using Victorian age birth control. She was going full force.
Yeah, so she was a raging alcoholic and not making good life choices. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's they're so strange when you read about them, though. Like, you know, their kind of profiles, they were quite I think the doctor was definitely a bit predatory. Yeah, I think he was for sure.
Yeah.
But you know,
like we said, he had a whole hospital full of prime targets just at his disposal.
Yeah, I definitely think he was a bit predatory. Yeah. But it's like when you read their kind of profiles, that everyone was so normal. You know, like Florence, like she got this money and she didn't kind of go mental with it. She just bought a big house, why not? And she was only really interested in the house so that she could have horses and garden, because they were the things that she was interested in. You know, she didn't seem mental. Mrs. Cox didn't seem mental. No one seemed mental. You know, normally you would expect one of these characters to be totally off the wall and totally dodgy, but they were all just normal.
Were they though?
Well, obviously not. They appeared normal. I suppose that's the scary part.
Yeah.
Because they obviously weren't.
History's always written by the people who won the war, right?
Yeah, but I mean, who won the war in this case? Because she certainly didn't. Because 2 years later, she ended up dead in a house from drink.
That was because she was a raging alcoholic and not making good life choices.
Well, yeah, that's true. See that, because that's the funny thing. When he's alive, and before he dies, it's not her alcoholism is not really mentioned. It's always to her husband that's the alcoholic, that's got the alcohol problem. You know, like she thought Ricardo had an alcohol problem, and then she thought Charles Bravo had an alcohol problem, and her out drinking is never really brought up. But she dies of alcoholism, and on the night of his poisoning, she drank 2 bottles of sherry. She was a
But that's her.
pisshead.
That's what I'm saying. That's her style. It's the same reason why when his parents decided to get an attorney, she spun it the other way and decided to throw him under the bus and dig up all the dirt.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it would make her look bad. So, they're not going to bring up all her alcoholism because it'll make her look bad.
So you think, like, basically the only reason she kind of comes across as anyway like decent human is because it's been spun her ways. Like,
yeah,
she spun it her way, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
I think they're all awful. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So I do think Gully was pretty predatory, and I do think that Charles Bravo was probably a bit of a prick as a husband. I do think that she was probably a bit of a nightmare as a wife. Yeah, I think it was probably an ugly situation to be in, really. I think my favorite of all of them is Marianne, and I think she's the only one that told the truth.
I know, she totally got overshadowed too. She really did. She really did.
I think if you read the inquest transcripts, she's the one that really, I think, comes across with any dignity, and it's the most interesting part of the inquest, because you have to kind of read between the lines of what she's saying, but what she says is very revealing in a lot of cases.
Because you were saying too that there was a lot that was said by her in the inquest that you didn't include.
The inquest was massive, but Daisy there says about her alcoholism. Yeah, she must have been drinking a lot. Like, I think serious. But yeah, no, the inquest was massive. So the inquest was like several 100,000 words long of transcripts, and there was just the dirt on everyone came out, basically. So it was annoying because I wanted to include it in the episode because there was so much of this, like, I don't think I really got across quite how much that inquest was a nightmare for everyone. But it really, yeah, it would have been. I mean, it was enough to fill a book just for the inquest report, because it went on for like 23 days, I think it was. Certainly near a month. Yeah, it was
like
really
a trial.
Long. Yeah, exactly. It was a really long inquest, and yeah, it was meticulously kind of reported on, sometimes like verbatim in the newspapers, and they were like full broadsheet newspapers, just type print text, just the whole page would just be like verbatim of that day's inquest. It was bonkers.
I thought an inquest was basically just to determine what a cause of death was.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But they had to determine whether or not they think that someone poisoned him or not, I guess. To a part two. Yeah, just on the dirt, just on the gossip and the dirt. Yeah.
Totally.
Because Marianne's definitely the most interesting one, because say you read her kind of everything whenever she speaks, and you really have to read between the lines because you can tell that she's kind of subservient as well, and she's kind of still she plays that role, whether or not she means to, or she just is kind of playing that role. But part two, the dirt. Yeah,
the dirt, starring Marianne.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it was definitely that inquest absolutely battered everyone. Basically, like everyone involved got absolutely battered.
See, there's a bonus episode right there.
So really, her threats weren't really much about his kind of Charles Bravo's kind of bit on the side. His mistress, because he already got battered at the inquest. Everyone got battered. No one came out of it looking good.
Well, but wasn't, I mean, that was before he was married to her anyway.
Yeah, yeah, but he was still keeping a child with her, so I suppose that was, scandal.
But it wasn't like he was married when he was doing it.
No, I just but she was married, I guess. So that was the scandal. But I mean, this is Victorian scandal as well. I mean, let's face it, didn't take much, did it?
No.
I mean,
I mean, this is the age when they were, pulling cheesecloth out of their mouth and saying it was, ghostly,
yeah,
ghostly apparitions.
the absence of kind of celebrity magazines. This was the height of scandal. This was big news. So yeah, they got battered at the inquest. Everyone got battered, and but yeah, say then 2 years later, she wound up drinking herself to death, basically, which also leads you to believe that, how happy was she about the whole situation about her husband? Did she and her killing her husband?
I think it was more her just being unhappy with who she was
And like
just herself.
And do you think there was a guilt there? Do you think that's why she drank herself to death? Do you think there was guilt, or do you think she just was unhappy with herself?
I think she was just unhappy with herself. I think that's just who she was. And I mean, alcohol's an addiction, just like, any other drug. It's not like they had rehab for you to, pop into and do your 90-day stint to get clean.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it, really. I mean, everyone pretty much agrees. Does anyone not agree? Like, does anyone in the chat disagree with that theory that it was Cox and Florence? Does anyone think it was, or is just pretty much everyone on board with Cox and Florence murdered him?
Yeah, because we know that Trent and Morelli both think that it was her, but Daisy and Lotus Flower came in late. So, do you guys think it was her?
Okay, it seems like that's the consensus, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because some of the earlier books, I've got I have like 3 books on this, and some of the earlier books don't even suggest Cox and Florence as a theory.
Really?
One of the books I've got is from 1956, and that one doesn't even talk about Cox and Florence.
What does it talk about then? Are they blaming it on the coachman?
It's basically like there is no kind of solid theory to it, and they sort of lean on the idea that it could have been manslaughter. Erin Michelle Moriarty, welcome. Yeah. It's the live chats are quite fun. They're sort of chaotic. You're welcome to jump onto the stream at any point as well. Everyone is. The links in the description, although we're wrapping it up now, kind of thing. But if you ever come along to the live streams, the links are usually in the description, and you'll just basically be dropped straight into this chat. You don't have to use video.
I was just going to say, it doesn't have to be video. You guys, it can just be vocal chat. So, and it'll just show like a blank screen or your little icon or whatever it is. So you don't have to do video. It'll ask you when you join how you want to join in. So
yeah, you don't have to. If you don't want to, just vocals fine. We've had a few people in the past, haven't we? Just do their voice. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty much wrapping it up this week anyway, aren't we? Because everyone pretty much thinks it was Cox and Florence. I think that's pretty much a kind of a wash, really.
The next one will be good, I think.
What is the next episode? I'm supposed to be researching it right now.
Oh my god!
Hang on a minute. What was I doing?
It was the book that I sent you.
Oh wait. Oh. No, it's changed.
Oh, are you changing it up?
I've changed the episode. So the next episode, I know what it's going to be. It's going to be, do we want a scoop? It's going to be the Beast of Chivaudan.
Are you going to do that one?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I love that story.
So I've been researching 2 in parallel, and they're both kind of a similar kind of vibe with that kind of Beast of Chivaudan, a bit folklore, very old history. But I've kind of, whichever one kind of won the research kind of race is going to be this week's episode, and it's looking like it's going to be the Beast of Chivaudan.
You've been wanting to do that one for a while, though.
Yeah, just do something a bit different because I like to kind of mix it up a bit and keep it so it's not always murdery, and it's you know, a bit of ghost and bit paranormal, bit kind of folklory, mix it all in. And I feel like we've been doing a lot of murders, so I just wanted to do something a bit different.
Morelli asked you a question that they think you're
Oh,
just like
sorry.
bypassing it. They're like, oh, he's just not looking at it.
Oh, yesterday, today, coming back. Yes, it is coming back. Sorry, it's you know, it's good that you mentioned that. Actually, it's definitely coming back. But I'm going to basically essentially relaunch it. It doesn't mean so much if you watched it on YouTube, but if you were subscribed to the podcast, I'll still release it on YouTube like normal, but I'm going to actually release it as a separate podcast this time. And basically what happened is I was backed up in episodes. So I had like a backlog of episodes recorded. And then when I got chickenpox, they all ran out. So I'm
right before the Titanic sank.
Right when the Titanic sank, I was gutted because I was really like looking forward to doing following the Titanic's journey. But I'm going basically in about a week, 2 weeks. I'm going to bring that back, and it will be like as usual. But it's basically after I had chickenpox, it wiped out all of my backlog for everything of Dark History. So I'm kind of starting again.
He will.
Of building that up. So yeah, it will come back, and it will be not too long, like 1-2 weeks, and then I'll bring it back, and it'll be as before.
Shoot for a target date of June 1st, okay?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, basically, chickenpox is getting the blame for everything at the moment. It's like, oh, I had chickenpox. That's that. But in reality, it's kind of true. It did. I mean, I kind of was a bit man flu about it, and was like, I'm just going to lay in bed for 2 weeks. But it did wipe out pretty much everything.
Total man flu.
Yeah, right. I remember I phoned you up at one point, and you were like, "Oh my god, you look awful."
Chickenpox.
Oh, thank you very much, Lotus Flower. That's very kind. Yeah, I'm gonna get shy now, so let's call it a day.
Now he's gonna get all like Ben British embarrassed and all of that stuff.
Yeah, don't cope with. I can't cope with people's like praise. Oh. But yeah, no, it will be back. Yesterday, today will definitely be back because I really enjoyed that, and it's really fun, and I think it's just funny. So I definitely will be bringing it back. It's just a matter of kind of logistics at the moment and practicalities. But yeah, is there anything that I need to tell anyone about like in terms of things coming up? So it'll be our 2nd anniversary quite soon, and we'll be doing like polls on the social media for a kind of awards ceremony for like basically. I don't know if anyone's ever heard the last 1-year anniversary episode. We did like who was the biggest bastard for that year and who was the kind of the nicest person and things like that, which is actually quite a challenge to find a nice person in Dark Issues episodes. Yes. So we're going to be kind of coming up with some topics, and then last year I didn't really have I just selected the winners, like who I wanted to win. But this year will be I'm going to be putting out to voting on social media, so everyone can vote for who they want to win the things. So that'll be coming up in June. I think, is it June?
Yeah. July 17th is the anniversary. So I think what we're going to do is we'll start popping out like a question, probably like one a week on social media for you to vote on something with options. And then, obviously whoever gets the most vote wins on a certain thing. If you're on Patreon, there might be a couple of extra things to vote on, just little categories that kind of as a perk for the patrons to be able to vote on that, maybe not everybody else gets to see quite yet. But we're going to do that. And then for the month of June, we'll do the other announcement of the next live stream. But for the month of June, we've got a couple things planned. So
okay. See, Hallie's totally got this. Like I'm just useless to any kind of planning, anything.
for the month of June, we're gonna have a couple of things going on just to kind of lead into the anniversary on July 17th. So it should be good. It should be good. We've got some things planned. Did do a switch on the merch store in case.
Oh yeah, so we changed the
anyone
merch
looks
store
at
to
that.
make it better.
We did. The merchandise switched over to Redbubble instead of Teespring, and take my word from it, it's a good switch. It's a good switch.
It's difficult to find a store that sells like Europe and America and is good,
Yeah.
basically. So yeah, I think this is now the 5th store that I've sort of tried.
The other
So
thing,
hopefully
too,
this will be a good one.
trying to find an option for merch that doesn't rape you for shipping per
Doesn't
item.
totally rip you off. Yeah, right.
It was really bad with a couple of them, but yeah. So we're gonna try to get some new things out, some new designs and stuff like that. So yeah, it'll be good. So I think what we decided was live streams are probably going to happen. So if you've got an episode release on a Sunday, the live stream will be that Friday or Saturday of that same week.
Yeah, and I think that'll just kind of I have to jiggle that in terms of my work and stuff, like when I can kind of do it, because obviously I have to stay up. I mean, now it's like I don't even know what time it is, 4:30 in the morning. So Jesus, how is it 4:30 in the morning? I completely forgot. I felt like it was lunchtime for some reason. You know, when you get that kind of weird kind of suddenly things seem wrong, because I was sure it wasn't this late.
But
because I had like an hour nap before we started.
Yeah, that's the problem. But
It's
they'll
totally
alternate.
fun, yeah.
Sometimes they'll be earlier. That way, Ben can actually.
Well, it's sort of so everyone can kind of get a chance to come on, like if they're from Europe or America or whatever. But the audience is much bigger in America, so you guys get preferential treatment.
So he plays favorites a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, that's cool. That's pretty much that. If you want to know where our social media and stuff is, darkissues.com. Everything's on darkissues.com. Just go there.
Yeah. Lotus Flower, no worries. Like, not even. Just letting people know that if they are on Patreon, then they would see.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But
like,
no, don't even. Yeah, seriously.
Patreon is like, anyone that supports on Patreon is amazing, but anyone that doesn't, no, it's totally fine. Like,
there's still going to be things available.
I definitely know as well that everyone, don't. Yeah, seriously, like patrons.
Yeah,
it's free, and I really like the fact that podcasting is free for everyone. Like, and you shouldn't feel guilt tripped into any of that shit. So yeah, that's pretty much that. If you want to find out any of the social media links, everything, darkissues.com. It's got everything pretty much on that. Yeah. And that's pretty much that. So thanks very much for watching, everyone.
Thank you. It was fun. It was nice seeing some new people on the chat.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Erin. Say if you ever want to come on, you're always more than welcome to come on and just start like gate crash this and chat and get your point across and talk.
Excuse the dog in the background. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to see the research notes. If you can read them. My handwriting is a right mess.
It's interesting.
it's chaos. But yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for watching and getting involved, and everything, all of that stuff. I'm gonna go and have a sleep. Yes. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Cheers.